Hey, good evening. Hope everybody's doing well today. Hope you had a good day. I had a nice time doing my Faith RX workout this morning, a version of the Passion WOD, and then we had a nice Zoom meeting about 10 o'clock this morning. About 6 or 7 of us were on there. But wanted to take tonight, tomorrow's Easter, and as I get talking with people, they often wonder, how I came to do what I do. And I wanted to take a little time this evening to just kind of give you my story of how I became a Christian and how I came to be a pastor. And really, my story starts back as a teenager. I grew up Catholic down the Cape and was an altar boy. Not being disrespectful in saying this, but the reason I was an altar boy, not because I was really into church. I had to go, and being an altar boy would give me something to do while I was there. So that's why I got into it probably around 12 or 13 years of age. And I did that for a few years, and but then started working, and by the time I was about 15 or 16, I was really all done with that, and didn't really see the need for church in my life. I wasn't against God, but at the same time, just had other things going on. And I remember, I could say the first time that I could say that God began to work in my heart was probably when I was about, somewhere in the range of 14, 15 years old. I had a job at a seafood market, summer job, and I would ride my bike over. It took me about a half hour, 45 minutes to ride my bike there. And often I would stop off at this local pond and go swimming. And there were these hiking trails around there. And so I went on these hiking trails. And for whatever reason, I went barefoot. And I had gone a long way and thought it looped around. But the path just ended. And I was like, man, I can't walk all. My feet were killing me. So there was this lake that it had looped around. And I'll just swim across the lake. And so I began to swim across that lake, and I was in pretty good shape. But, I got about halfway across, and my legs started cramping up on me. And I was like, oh, man, this isn't good. I'm going to head back. And because I looked over where I was trying to go, I was like, it's still a long ways away. So I'm gonna turn around and go back because I don't think I'll make it going across. And I looked back, and it was about the same distance back, and I was, and I got scared. I couldn't really move one of my legs. I don't remember which one it was, but I just couldn't move it very well. I was just exhausted, and I remember turning over on my back, just kind of floating there. There was nobody around. There was no help, and man, I was just scared. I was scared I was going to die. I remember it was a clear blue day, not a cloud in the sky, and I'm just looking up at the sky, and I'm just laying there floating on my back, and not really able to move my legs, just kind of moving my arms, keeping myself afloat. And I remember I said, God, I don't want to die. I'll give my life to you. I'll do whatever you want me to, or just if you spare me. And then I started saying every prayer I could think of, Our Father, the prayer to Mary there, Hail Mary. I might even throw an act of contrition in there. At that time, I knew it, but and I just was talking with God. And all it was is blue skies, and that's all I could see. I couldn't see any land. I couldn't see anything. I just saw clear, crystal blue skies. That's all my eyes could see, and I just sat there praying, God, get me out of this, and I don't know for how long, but all I can tell you is for however long I did that, the next event that happened was I felt something on my back, and I turned to my right, and I felt it on my shoulder, and I'd somehow gotten to the other side over however long it was. I don't know how I got there. It really wasn't swimming. I was trying to move my arms in that direction, but I wasn't swimming. I was floating. I was on my back the whole time, really focused more on God. And I'll tell you, that day, God became just a little more real to me. I believe he spared me that day. And then I went right back on to my life and didn't really give much thought to those things. But God never forgets when you make a promise to him. And 2 years later, God would begin to really work. And I had a good friend. His name was Pat, and we worked together and would get into some trouble together, and went to school together and so on. And unfortunately, and of course, this is going back now about 23 years. One Friday evening, I believe, after work, might have been a Saturday, I can't quite remember, but I know it was June 15th. Was the date of 96 it would have been, so 24 years ago now. We were out going from one place to the next, and he was with some other people in the car in front of us, and decided to start car surfing. So he climbed up on the roof there, and they got a little bit out of our sight, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I know that he fell off and landed on his head and face, and our vehicle that we were in came upon him just a moment or just seconds probably after it happened. We didn't see it happen, but we were there. We were the first ones there, and it was just a very gruesome scene. And I kind of took charge there as people began to come out of their homes, and there must have been a crowd of about 15, 20. I don't even know how many people were there, but they were just all listening to me, and I did my best to care for my friend, to do first aid and CPR, and sadly, my friend passed away that night. And that marked a turning point in my life. I struggled greatly from that day forward with PTSD and a lot of different things, but what would happen is about a year later, I had gone through counseling and tried taking medication and done a lot of different things. But a year later, just after I graduated high school, I started going to religious counseling, really feeling I had nothing to lose because I was such a mess. And so there I went, and there I was given the gospel. Now, growing up Catholic, I had it was like, think of it like this: I had all the pieces to a puzzle, but they were all disjointed. They weren't put together, and I was missing a few pieces. And that pastor that day, and I'm very thankful for him, he put the puzzle together for me, and he gave me the few missing pieces that I was missing. And I understood that day that I could be saved not by my religion or my baptism or by being a Catholic, but I could be saved by understanding that I was unworthy of heaven, that my good deeds and my religion could not get me there, but that God had done everything I needed, and that the sacrifice was made through Jesus Christ, that if I would put my faith in Him alone, apart from any of my religion or apart from any of my good deeds, apart from my works, that I could be saved. And that day I understood, and I was 18 years old, just graduated high school, and I asked the Lord to save me. But I was already set to leave to go to college, go to Plymouth State College at the time. Now it's Plymouth State University up in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and I left 2 weeks later. And I didn't have any foundational teaching or anything like that, and I went up to that school, and I did have a desire to understand the things of the Lord. And I remember I got there, I started. I found this Christian group. It was on campus. I think it was called Chi Alpha or something like that. Well, anyhow, they were just weird. I mean, man, I went there a few times, and I just were a little weird for me, more in the Pentecostal realm, and I didn't know anything about that, but it just wasn't my scene. And so I just kind of backed away from that and kind of just drifted, ended up joining a fraternity, and would eventually become the president of that fraternity, Pi Kappa Alpha. And I got a few old fraternity brothers have been watching some of these, so it's good to see you guys. And look, bottom line is this: I did not live a Christian life. All right. Fact of the matter is, my life there at college was probably more ungodly than it was prior to me accepting Christ as my Savior there. After I finished high school and before I went to college. And many years, probably 5, 6 years, I never set foot in church. I was a very conflicted individual, and but I know the Lord never forgot about me. There was a certain ethic to me. I remember I became what was called the house manager of our fraternity, and basically, long story short, funneled about $40,000 of other people's money through my checking account to pay all the fraternity's bills, and everybody trusted me. They knew I wouldn't steal, and I never did. I was very honest and in that regard, and I do attribute that to the working of Christ in my life. But my life was not reflective of a Christian. I remember one time I told one girl I was a Christian, and they said, "No offense, D-Jax, but you're a horrible Christian." And I said, "I know, it's why I don't tell anybody." And but God was still there. I remember one night, and I don't remember. This is probably my junior year. I had a bad drinking problem in college. That was the way I dealt with my PTSD back then, was I just drank and did whatever else came my way. Basically not dealing with it. And that's how a lot of people handle problems, is they just escape it. They take sedatives. They don't talk about it. They bury it. They hide it. And they never really deal with it. And that's exactly how I handled it for 6 years. And in the middle of all that, I remember one night, middle of winter, and just drinking a lot. And I went for a walk, and out in a snowstorm about 2, 3 in the morning, and by myself. Nobody was with me, and I don't know what came over my mind, but I felt like, you know what, I'm just tired of this. I'm just going to lay down here and go to sleep. Out in the middle of this snowstorm. It was in the street, actually, down this side road. And I did. I laid down there in the snow, and I went to sleep. I remember just closing my eyes. And then I don't know how long I was there for. I know I got covered in snow pretty good, but I'll never forget it. And I don't know exactly what happened, only heaven will tell, but I will never forget it, clear as day. 2 individuals came. This is probably about 3 in the morning, down a side road up in Plymouth, and 2 individuals. They were both the same height, all dressed in black, wearing black hats. They picked me up, by my collar, just picked me up, literally off the ground, one of them did, and then just set me down on my feet. And they were big guys, and I'll never forget, a couple things stood out about that. First, what they said, "You don't belong here, go home." And that's all they said. And I looked at him, and what struck me was, here I am covered in snow, because it was snowing pretty good, and these guys just didn't have a speck of snow on them. I don't know where they came from. And so I wandered down the street a little bit, heading home, looked back, and I did not see them. Now, it's easy. They could have gone a different direction. I just didn't see. I don't know. Look, these are either 2 guys that I'm really thankful came by. I never saw them before, and I never saw them after. Or they could have been 2 angels that God sent. I'm not sure which. Heaven will tell, but I'm sure glad they came. God spared me that night. And as time went on, I graduated from college. I got a good job, worked in the environmental field, did well in that job. I did that for 2 years, but a year into it, I just was, not happy. Didn't feel like I was fulfilling. I had everything that I was supposed to have. Man, I had a company car and bought my own home, and I had a great girlfriend, and everything I was supposed to have. And I had no joy. And I had no peace. And I still struggled immensely with my emotional and mental issues. And I remember just being overwhelmed with this feeling that I needed to go to church. I didn't know where to go. Me and Jen were dating, and God was working on her simultaneously, so we just started visiting church, and we saw some weird stuff. But I thank the Lord that He guided me and led us to Victory Baptist Church in Londonderry. Pastor Fuller was the pastor there. And I had been kind of discouraged visiting churches, man. I couldn't get a pastor to talk with me. I couldn't get any spiritual advice. And I was like, man, I'm going to stop wasting my time going to these churches where no one has time to talk to me. What a shame, by the way. What a shame when people go to a church and the pastor doesn't have time for them. That's embarrassing. But anyhow, I remember I'm going to call him. So I called Victory Baptist there in Londonderry, and I said, well, look, can you just tell me about your church? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, it's real simple. If you want to hear from the Bible, you're going to like this church. And if you don't want to hear from the Bible, you won't like this church. I said, well, that's what I want. I want to learn the Bible because I don't know anything about it. And I ended up going that day, that next Sunday, and I don't remember what he preached, but man, God just got a hold of my heart. I never really heard preaching before. And I went home to my apartment there, and I knelt down on my futon, which was my couch, and I didn't know what I was doing, but what I was doing there was repenting. I told God I'm sorry for the way I've been living and the things I've been doing. And 2 days later, Jen got saved, and I made a promise that day, that Sunday. I said, God, here's what I'm going to do. As I learn the Bible, I'm going to do it. I don't know what it says, but as I learn it, I'll do it. And here I am, 16, 17 years later, just a byproduct of that. I started learning the Bible and doing what it says. Take your religion, throw it out the window. What does the Bible say? And do that. And that's what I started doing. And I started going to that church and being faithful, and Jen got saved, we got married, and we served there for a year. And I remember going through and just doing everything that was available in the church. And God, as I did, he said, yeah, that's good. I'm glad you did it. Now I want you to do something else. And within a year, I was doing everything in the church. And I was like, well, Lord, there's nothing more for me to do. And he said, well, there's one more thing you could do. I said, well, what's that, Lord? He said, you could do what the pastor's doing. I said, Lord, I don't know how to preach. And he said, well, I didn't ask you if you knew how to preach. I just asked you if you're willing. And I remember I knelt at the altar one day there during an invitation and said, Lord, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to. And God led me down to North Carolina. Me and Jen moved there on faith with no job and no real place to live. And God took care of all that. And we were there for 4 years in North Carolina. My last year I was there, I did deputation all up and down the East Coast from Georgia to Maine, and preached in 160 different churches in 14 months. And then God worked out the circumstances to bring us to Lifeline Baptist Church. This year will mark 12 years that I've been here. I want to say I'm so thankful for what God's done in my life. They took a kid from the Cape who didn't know a thing about God, and he saved him. And if God could save a man like me, and if God could take me out of the things that I was involved in, then he can use anybody. And that's the attitude I take to the ministry of Lifeline Baptist Church. That's why those of you at the church that are listening, when you got somebody that you think, man, this guy's just got no hope, again. I don't care what their background is. I don't care what their upbringing is. Man, I hear people talking about a godly heritage. Man, that's great, but it means nothing to me. Because what I've learned is people stand on their own 2 feet. Whether you were raised in a Christian home or not, I don't care. You stand on your own 2 feet. I'm not going to judge you by your parents, and I'm going to judge you on your own actions. I remember once talking to somebody who was bragging about being a 7th generation Christian, but they were carnal. Look, I don't care how long you've been saved. I don't care what your background is. I just care what you do for Jesus. That's what matters. And if God take a man like me and use me the way he has, and to build a church under my leadership, following the Lord's leadership, then I believe that God can do anything with anybody. That's why I'll never sell anybody short. I always look for the potential. And just, I'm so thankful. So, tomorrow's Easter. We celebrate the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. The resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ means that all things are possible. Don't you ever give up on those people. Don't you ever think there's no hope. All right? And don't ever think that just because, by the way, I'm going to say, special thanks to the guys I went to college with and to my teachers. I came there, and the fact of the matter is, I didn't know a lot. I didn't understand doctrine. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't have that all figured out. But I had great teaching. A lot of guys come to the Massachusetts area and they get all messed up doctrinally because they don't know their Bible. Because their Bible college didn't do a good job of training them. And so the minute they come here and don't have somebody to hold their hand about their doctrine and they get challenged, they wilt. They crumble. They fall apart because they're not sound in the Scriptures. I thank the Lord that God put me under sound teaching early on and strengthened me and prepared me to come do the work that God's given me. I want to wish everybody a happy Easter this coming Easter tomorrow. It'll be different. You're gonna be home, and or some of you doing drive-in church. That's awesome. But if listen, I'll say this: if you don't have a church that you're attending or watching or whatever, tune in Lifeline Baptist Church. We're on YouTube. Probably the best feed you'll get. You can go Facebook Live too. But so many churches are doing Facebook Live, the feed's not very good sometimes. So we're on YouTube. Check us out. If you got your home church, great, awesome. Go there, look there. But if you don't, I'd love for you to check in. And if you're interested, if you're bored one day, look up a program called Unshackled. And they did a 2-part series on my testimony. It's all actors, and it's pretty good. So anyhow, I hope my testimony's been an encouragement to some. And Lord bless you. Thank you for tuning in. And have a good Easter. God bless you. Bye.